morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink. I'm here with Ted Schilowitz for This Week in XR, and it is August 5th, 2022. Good morning, Ted. Before we get started, let me read a short message from our sponsor. This Week in XR is sponsored by our friends at Zapper. Their award-winning in-house Zapper creative studio makes mobile AR experiences for the world's leading brands. You can also make AR experiences yourself using Zapper's web-based tool ZapWorks, but that is not all. Zapper also makes ZapBox, the world's most affordable smartphone-powered mixed reality headset. Check them out at zapper.com or zap.works. And with that out of the way, we have a great guest today, Ted. Catherine Henry, SVP of Metaverse Strategy for Mediamonks. Mediamonks, a consultancy and strategy company that also helps some of the world's leading brands. So
yeah, we had her, we did a talk with her at AWE, and she is a fascinating and very well-versed sort of entity that really kind of gets all this stuff. And in fact, I've got other meetings this morning that I'm tight on time with, so I'm going to let you do that just with her, and I'm going to run the news recap with you this morning.
Cool. Well, let's talk about a couple of things. I mean, first of all, in the news this week, not our usual corporate M&A nonsense, but some real virtual reality making the world a better place, where surgeons in Brazil used VR surgical planning using real CT scans and MRI scans to separate co-joined twins at the head.
Right.
One of the doctors described it as space age stuff. But to me, it's a great, we get tied up in the consumer gyrations and short-term stuff. But this is long-term immersive technology making the world a better place.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned this week. We have an interesting swath of news that is not just from the big boys this week. No. So, and look, medical technology and medical use cases is something both you and I are very passionate about. I found this story fascinating and inspiring. And what's interesting is it's not just one of one, it's one of many. I mean, this is making a little news, but almost on a daily basis, I'm on the board of a big healthcare organization in Florida. On a daily basis, mixed reality and virtual reality tool sets are being used across the sector it's almost becoming a mainstream use case for bringing in remote training, remote doctors, remote use cases. So that's a nice sort of state of the industry that's doing a lot of good for a lot of people.
So from the sublime to the almost ridiculous, we have Quest's most popular basketball game, which is from App Lab, which is the not official Quest store. A company called IRL Studios. I love their name. IRL Studios has an app called Gym Class, which has just raised $8 million from Andreessen Horowitz. They're graduates of Y Combinator and all sorts of techie CEOs investing in this. Kind of exciting. The video that I posted on the column is very exciting. I don't know whether I'm up to virtual basketball, but it looks like a pretty great.
Well, the beauty of it is I'm sure you are. That's the great thing about virtual basketball. But there's a bigger story underneath this, and I know some of our listeners will remember something called Gorilla Tag, which lived on this same trajectory. There's a great part of what's going on with the Quest, which is not the big commercial space, not the big budget studios doing stuff, but independent guys and girls doing interesting things, posting them up in the App Lab world, letting sort of, the users gravitate to them. And it's kind of an organic growth part of the platform. Whether Meta wants that or not, it's an important part of an ecosystem to not just have, the top shelf kind of AAA stuff working, but things that can actually find an audience organically. And Gorilla Tag was one that did that a few months back, and now this one is the next one. So it's a good state for the industry to watch this kind of stuff and see these things find success and then find funding.
A lot of the most important artistic apps in XR are actually made by individuals or small groups of people. I think of Eugene Chung's work at Penrose Studios, Alamet, Arden's Wake, and these are not giant companies making these things. Even if you think of Baobab, which made many of the great early 360 videos that came out with the early mobile VR headsets, or mobile AR headsets, I should say, based on smartphones. So, I think it's pretty exciting that independent artists are being, as they always are in a new medium, among the first to kind of try to stretch the
Yeah. And what's interesting,
technology
even,
to tell stories, because they don't have the shot or the cinematic language that informs all other media, so they have to.
right. And I think it's interesting, those companies that you mentioned went out within a business dynamic to raise capital and then go build that creativity and deliver that. Whereas this type of stuff with the virtual basketball stuff and the Gorilla Tag stuff literally are kind of just joy projects that like inspired creators put out there into the world with no idea how they're going to make money or create a business out of it, and then the business comes to them. And that is a really important part of the ecosystem. It's really fun to watch that.
So we have some AR headset stories this week, Ted.
Yeah,
3
absolutely.
to be exact, which is very unusual, actually. So we have New Eyes and Samsung creating AR solutions for a headset that tethers to a smartphone, and they're focusing on AR solutions for headsets for healthcare.
Right.
And
There you
then
go. There's our healthcare story.
yeah, and then
again,
Xiaomi, a company that is not well known in the United States, but is one of the biggest companies in China, are launching something called Mija glasses for less than $400.
Mhm.
It's a micro display with a very high-end Sony OLED, and they're saying that they're targeting it toward active consumers. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it sounds a lot like what New Eyes is doing. And then there's also something from a company called Active Look, which makes goggles for skiing and glasses for active athletes, running triathlons or doing bike racing, that are very inexpensive for what they are, and they also tether to a smartphone. So it seems like these tethered glasses are kind of making a comeback here. We've always known they were there, but it's interesting that sort of 3 companies are throwing this up right away. It suggests when we get to CES in a few months, there's going to be more than a couple.
Right. And, it's interesting that CES is just a few months away. That's sort of a shocking thing to think about. But you and I have made reference to this thesis a number of times on the podcast when we talk about the writing of the device, right? Meaning there are certain devices that companies are focused on the kind of graphics and the kind of information delivery that are not these fully immersive, very expensive, very bespoke devices, but they're designed for kind of light touch information. And those that you mentioned today are kind of entering this market to sort of look at, the pros and the cons of what Google Glass attempted to do. And then when Google Glass bought North, that's a similar style of design and design concept. And even our friends at Mojo Vision that are doing the contact lens, similar concept, right? Which is not trying to fill up and make these like magical mixed reality machines like a Magic Leap, but something that's much more sort of productive and utilitarian. So map information, phone call information comes up, statistics, kind of like the stuff you get on your watch, your Apple Watch, that sits up on your eye. And for the medical professionals, going back to our healthcare discussion, the idea of bringing up statistics like instantly without having to look at a computer or go to their assistant or look down at a phone is pretty powerful, right? So there's a lot of different use cases for the versions of mixed reality, and you can keep costs very low when you focus on what we call light touch sort of graphics, which is very powerful.
So a couple more stories before we get to Catherine. First of all, Snap has done its first game. I did not know.
Have you played it yet? Is it out yet, or is it?
It's out. Yeah, it's called Ghost Phone.
Okay, good. I'm going to download it and play it.
It has a Pokemon Go kind of vibe to it. It's on. You can find it on Lens Explorer if you have Snapchat. So that's the fun last story. The unfun last story is it sounds like the IVAS deal between Microsoft and the U.S. Army is hitting some serious headwinds.
Yeah.
And it kind of reflects sort of what's happening at Microsoft itself, with Alex Kipman leaving and the big reorg to their XR groups there. But bad news because of the scale and the promise that program had, and also its support from the actual people inside of the Army. But Congress obviously not as impressed.
Well, and I think you and I saw this coming, right? We talked about it a few
Mhm.
times. Where it was a head scratcher for us that the HoloLens, with what it did, and even with the customization, again, was not probably the right fit for a military application, whereas something much lighter touch that can run power all day and be almost weightless to the soldier is probably a better
Yeah,
solution. So I
one
think
of the
they're coming to that same conclusion.
yeah, I mean, somebody said that they thought they could make night vision goggles a whole lot better before they worried about adding new information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So very telling. So we've got Catherine Henry from Mediamonks. I see she's in the waiting room. Ted, I will let you go.
Enjoy your interview, and I
We
will
will
be
miss
listening to
you.
it later this afternoon.
Catherine is almost as smart as you are, so I think she will
Oh,
hold your.
I bet you she's way smarter than me. So I'll be listening this afternoon when I'm done with my meeting.
I'll see you next Friday, Ted.
Thanks, Charlie.
Good morning, Catherine. Good to see you, and thanks for joining us on the show.
Good morning, Charlie. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Last time we were together, we were at AWE talking about big ideas with Mike Boland, Ted, and the great Alvin Grayland, president of HTC.
That's right. That was a fantastic roundtable. And I love the title of that. It always reminds me of the Coneheads from SNL. And I think I'm dating myself right now. But yeah,
Right.
That was fun. Really
yeah,
fun.
we were thinking so big we had extended craniums.
It still hurts.
You know, I thought I said at the time I was worried that we were all going to spend the whole panel agreeing with each other, and then Alvin came out and said he thought that most places in the metaverse were going to be built by AI.
Oh, really? Hey, listen, I believe that a lot of content probably will be built by AI because it's just easier. It's cheaper. Why hire half a dozen interns when you can have, Siri or something similar write it? So we'll see.
Meta demoed a voice enabled automatic metaverse builder.
Mm-hmm.
And actually Mark Zuckerberg demonstrated it, so you could say, build me a beach, and you would be in a beach scene, or I'd like to be in a park, and it would put you in a park.
Yeah.
Then you could say, no, it needs more park benches, no, it needs more trees, and the world building bot just makes them appear.
I could see that getting surreal really quickly. And moreover, I always say that, when was the last time you asked Siri more than one question, or Google? Because I'm agnostic when it comes to these voice assistants, but when was the last time you actually got the answer that you were looking for? I mean, half the time I have to repeat it. So I think it's going to be a long time before our AI and robot overlords take over.
Yeah, somebody's got to program those robot overlords after all.
That's true.
So for our listeners who aren't in the know, what is Mediamonks?
Well, Mediamonks is one of the world's largest digital media companies, and we've been in the business since the dawn of the .com era, really, since 2001. And so it's been really exciting to see the trajectory over time as we start to build out everything from advertising to media production, virtual worlds, virtual events. We do media analysis and social media influencer outreach, Interalter, including also strategy. So we're a massive global powerhouse with some 9,000 people across 54 countries around the world. And
Wow.
So it's really a lot of fun. We work with major brands, advising them about what the metaverse is, how to get all the management on board, talking about what the opportunity set is for them to monetize the metaverse, and most importantly, to also think about the Web3 implications and how we can really innovate the core business so that it is more integrated with this new shift that we're entering with the 3D web.
Do you think most companies should be building metaverse content right now?
Not necessarily content. I think that it really depends on the type of company. I mean, we work primarily with brands that are looking to establish a presence in the metaverse, but I think about the Logitech experience that we did for Roblox. It's weird because, you wouldn't think that a company that, computer company that's got, computer mouse, mostly for its mice, but technology, what are they going to do in Roblox? And yet we
Right.
created a really fun experience that tied them with this new generation of TikTok creators, which are really driving, they're the driving force behind most of the innovations in the entertainment industry, as we know. And so they're really tapping into this really cool segment with the TikTok awards that were held on in Roblox. And so it was a super exciting experience, the first live show with Gail and Lizzo and major performers. And it really, it really tipped the perception of this, brand that could be conceived like Intel or IBM, kind of a more traditional IT or technology company into this new space. So there are ways to bring brands in, but you really want to think more intelligently about it and think long term. Because I'm not really a big fan of these one-off experiences, or you have to do an event. I'm not a fan of the cookie cutter solution, and that includes NFTs.
Well, NFTs have entered a bit of a winter here. Do you think that they're going to recover?
Actually, I'm really excited that this happened, because I think that we were entering a period. I used to work in investment banking as a tech specialist for some 15 years, and so I feel like, and we talked about this. We've rode through some of the bumpier eras from the .com collapse. I used to advise .com companies that were going to do their IPO, so going to market, and then that kind of the floor fell out under some of what we considered some of the biggest names in the industry. And then later, of course, we also lived through, for me anyway, the hedge fund collapse. I was working with a hedge fund. It's algorithmically driven, so always in the tech space. And so, we've seen these corrections, and I think they're healthy and they're natural, because this is in any fast growing company, there are some that just don't have a solid business model. And there's some whose time was not just right, either too early or too late or too poorly managed. So this is a healthy correction. And I think that, the exuberance was pretty irrational. It was pretty overheated. And I think that it's going to just slow down some of the activity there, so people can maybe take a more intelligent approach. Will this mean that NFTs go away, or that the interest in NFTs goes away? I don't think so. But I do believe that we're going to see a kind of a bifurcation of the market, where you see the art NFTs continue to soar, because the art market has always been very highly valued, and scarcity is really kind of a primary driving element to pricing in that space. And then when it comes to branded NFTs, people are going to spend whatever they spent in real world. So if it's for baseball cards had a certain value, I think it's going to be more or less adjust to those levels. It's not going to be just because it's a digital asset. So exciting times ahead to be sure, but again, proceed with caution. Again, it's all about strategy and thinking long term.
Well, it's also true that all NFTs are not created equal. And if you look, for example, at Bored Ape Yacht Club, which I wrote about in the column this week, there was a terrific article in Fast Company that shared the insider history, if you will, of Bored Apes. And not only did they have this spectacular NFT sale, but then they doubled down by offering a land sale to their NFT holders.
Yeah.
So they were and they collected almost $250 million. They overheated the Ethereum blockchain, which is not an easy thing to do.
No.
So they seem to be thriving in a world that is collapsing around them.
Yeah. Well, I think that, this is smart strategy, and it wasn't just because it was celebrity driven. It's because they really understood the potential for community, for creating potentially content with this. And so actually, it's really interesting to see, and this is one model that may succeed and may really be the blueprint for future success in the metaverse world, is to take this IP and turn it around. If you think about Hasbro, for example, Hasbro was like this. They had toys, and then they turned those toys into entertainment. So now you have these blockbusters like the Transformers. And that's interesting, because who would have thought that the car is actually turning, unlike Disney that had these marvelous stories that then turned into action figures and heroes. And so it's just a flip in the business model, but a very interesting one, and one to watch for sure.
I wonder if Mediamonks has a point of view of what the internet experience is going to look like in 10 years.
I will not speak on behalf of 9,000 people, and that you'll have to ask Sir Martin Sorrell himself or Wester Har, our brave leaders. But I will say that 10 years from now, of course, it's going to be very different. But I think what we're looking at is a very dynamic media engagement model that means that we're not going to have any one particular way of accessing the internet. And I think much of it's going to be mobile driven still, or some sort of wearable. As you know, my 72-page wearables report kind of just maps out my thoughts on where we are in the near and slightly longer term. But
can people get their hands on your report? Is it published?
Yeah, it's on my LinkedIn. It's one of my featured articles. I have all my XR Intelligence series are on there, and I am building a web page, but I get really caught up in writing articles, so I admin. But when it comes to the longer term of the three internet, again, it's a dynamic engagement model, and I think that with wearables or we're going to see different ways of approaching it. Now, I happen to be a big fan of VR, as you know. I love being in VR. I've made my own VR film once. I went back to film school, and it was just super exciting to learn this new medium. And I think that with all the creators, we're seeing a vast new creator economy, and that is so powerful. So I think that the worlds that we're going to see, persistent worlds in our own physical space with augmented reality, as well as the worlds that we can build in the virtual space, it's just tremendous. And it's hard to wrap our heads around. It's kind of like the early days of the iPhone. Whoever thought that some random stranger would rock up to my house, park outside, and I go, oh, there they are. I run outside, jump in there without knowing this person, just jump in their car, and they take me to the airport and drop me off, no money exchanged. Now, today, the concept like Uber or Uber Eats is totally normal. But really, in the early days of iPhone, who would have guessed that that's the possibilities that it opened up, or even finding a future partner? It's just, it's really weird if you think about it. So I think that we're going to see a lot of really weird but really cool stuff come out of this, hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years.
The Matthew Ball's book came out and created a big stir. He's the guy who's been writing the essays about the internet, largely inspired, as it turns out, if you read his book, by Tim Sweeney at Big Games. And Sweeney, of course, is device agnostic. He doesn't think that there's everything's going to be based on a browser, right? There's no it's going to be device agnostic.
Exactly.
So that's an interesting contrast to Facebook or Meta, which I think sees it as VR first. Everybody has their own sort of self-interest front and center. So although you've got Meta acknowledging that it's going to be device agnostic, clearly their view is VR first. So that's an interesting contrast that's sort of developed early in this contest. On one hand, you have Fortnite, which represents, to me at least, an internet that is evolving into more of a video game experience. And then on the other hand, you have VR, which requires that you actually occlude the physical world,
right,
and move around in a fully digital world, so that you have presence and co-presence with other people. So it's a very, very different view. I don't feel personally like there's a whole lot of presence in Fortnite, or really in anything I do on my phone. I mean, if you, I suppose you could say I'm present when I'm scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or Instagram. Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, they're like the same now. I don't even know what I'm looking at. Have you noticed that they've like trying
you're
to
not a phone person. You're not a phone person, and neither am I. And I get it. And I think when it comes right down to it,
I mean, it's just not going to give you presence.
They're not going to give you a shared sense of space, but neither does Zoom. Me staring.
Well, that is certainly true.
Yeah, it may staring at you in your world, in your background on this flat surface. I'm very aware of the distance between us, whereas in VR, that shared sense of space really does give us a sense of being present in the same place, obviously, but also a shared memory. And I think that really changes the dynamic of that conversation and that interaction. And that it's so rich and it's hard to explain unless you've really spent some time in VR. What I would say is that Meta, I wouldn't say they're putting all their eggs in the virtual reality basket, because we don't know what's happening, until we see some of those glasses come out next year.
Yeah.
Let's just see what that looks like. But I am really impressed by Zuckerberg's passion to be the leader in this space as a company and as an individual. And I feel like somebody's got to step up to it in the same way that Steve Jobs was the leader of the iPhone evolution. So really, really super impressive. And let's just see what comes out of it. Now, does this mean that they're going to continue to be the leader going forward? It's anybody's guess.
Well, Zuckerberg certainly has courage and conviction. He has tattooed the metaverse on his arm, so to speak.
I actually know somebody with a Unity tattoo on their a dev on their neck or something. It was really
That's
that was
a great sign of devotion.
Yeah, next level. But I mean, I did read Matthew Ball's book. I think it was brilliant, and I've been following his blog for a couple of years now. And I didn't know that he was following Tim Sweeney, but I am, to your point, also device agnostic. As I said before, I do believe it's going to be a dynamic engagement model, but I wouldn't really put my money on any one particular horse. I think it really depends on what you like. Now, I know some people at the AR house here in LA who absolutely believe that like AR is the way that they want to engage with the world, and that's why they're developing for it. But others say, it's the pass through VR, or they like the option of occlusion. And so VR is their preferred medium. I personally love VR, and I don't see the dystopian aspects. I see a lot of promise, especially for industry, entertainment, obviously, in social media, and and the future of education. It's so very powerful, and we've seen that proven in study after study. So
that's an interesting topic to explore a little bit. What is the future of entertainment in VR in particular?
What is the future? I feel like
what kind of entertainment can VR bring us that is not a game?
Well, here's the thing. That's kind of my current obsession. Is I'm looking at social behaviors in the metaverse, and I'm gonna, full disclosure, I am writing a book on this. It'll come out next spring.
Nice.
But,
can't wait.
Super excited. And so
does it have a title?
I can't tell you yet.
Yeah.
The title is part of the secret sauce.
All right. Good.
So what we're talking about is really looking at going back to media theory, which is, from the days of Marshall McLuhan, but even earlier from, say, Thomas Kuhn, really looking at behaviors and how they change over time with specific innovations and, and new media. And so this is, to me, a tool that enables different kinds of interactions. But, our core functionality as humans is, we're kind of hardwired to create and seek community. But what does that mean online? And how can we then take this and turn it into a storytelling medium? So I think, and this is just me riffing, when we saw a lot of the issues around, let's say, Roe v. Wade or Don't Say Gay in Florida, I was thinking it's going to be very difficult for companies not to take a position, because values matter so much to people, so that connecting with communities is really about connecting with values. That's the thing. If you were to, say, create documentaries or special moments in VR, you wouldn't necessarily have to really have a line about these things. You could really kind of show, don't tell what your values are. So I think that there's a space for storytelling in the same way that you might underwrite, I don't know, an education program. And so that could be a really powerful medium. I do see it evolving faster in education than branded storytelling. I think that that's a space that a lot of companies could really explore more deeply. The second thing is, I've written the draft for interactive reality shows in VR. There's a lot we can do, but it's really about outlining that for companies and showing them the way. And I think that because the pipelines in entertainment are so long and so detailed, it's hard to integrate that. But I think we're starting to see that baked into some of the movie premieres and some of the highlight moments, special worlds. But the important thing that entertainment companies should know is that they're already happening. The fans are building, and I've done this on LinkedIn too. A video taped my experience in a Shrek World, which is like the Louvre Museum, only all dedicated to moments Shrek. Like, Shrek avatars, Shrek games. They took every single Shrek merchandising box that you can imagine, from Shrek pizza to Shrek, I don't know, whatever, and they recreated it in VR. This must have taken somebody hours, if not years.
Where is this? Is this in VR chat, or where is this?
It's in VR chat. There's a
Shrek World in VR chat. Is it a PC world? Or can somebody get there on a Quest?
It's PC and mobile, and there are multiple. This person is obsessed.
Mm.
And then I also visited a Spider-Man.
There's also somebody's been doing an homage to Disneyland in VR chat.
I love the Disneyland in VR chat. There are a couple of them, but there's one that has like 8 different portals, and one is super dark.
Yes.
The other ones go back to the black and white. You saw that one? The black and white.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
That's one of my favorite.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the faux Disneylands in VR chat.
Me too.
I am surprised the actual Disney has not yet shut all that down, but
I don't want to tell them.
in the meantime, it is a great example of bespoke fan art. I mean, it's all done with a tremendous amount of respect and affection. So
Exactly.
it would be the not nice Disney that would take it down. The interesting, right? Because they have to make these decisions, right? Like here's Mickey Mouse crudely driven on the drawn or painted on the outside of a preschool.
Yeah.
Right now, should Disney object? It's a very close call there, because you don't want crudely drawn Mickey around. On the other hand, people did this out of love and respect for you, so you can't go police them.
Yeah, well, I would say this is not crudely drawn. This is one of the most sophisticated Disney worlds I've ever seen.
Really?
And frankly, it's so fun. Charlie, I will go with you anytime. That's
All
one of
right.
my favorite spaces.
We have to make a date to do that. So I have a question for you, because you're so bullish on VR. And of course, I am too. My entire career is based on it. But I do have a secret fear.
Uh-huh.
And my secret fear is...
Are we going to get out our headsets? Because I have...
Get out. No, I just realized I left this thing on. I'm worried that a lot of these are sitting in the back of people's drawers.
I
wish there was a way to find out, of the 10 million or so of these things that are out there, how many of those 10 million have been used in the last 30 days.
Do you know what, Charlie? I'm more worried about the people who say that, these NFT marketplaces are full of people. We're getting a lot of misinformation. I mean, we heard just yesterday, I think the numbers came out that some 1 million, units were sold in the last quarter alone or something. Yeah. I mean, who knows? But
that was Bolin. Bolin was playing with the numbers and trying to back out
the
$300 headset to the $900 million of revenue, and see if he could get out of it some estimate. And I think he came up with about 925 million.
But you see, I mean, I posted recently the trajectory of how many years it took for us to adopt like the telephone or televisions, and these things take time.
Oh, yeah.
What I would say is, again, these marketplaces that are boasting numbers that are really, really, really ambitious at best, and I won't name names, but we know which platforms those are. It just makes me pause, because I feel like there's a lot of disinformation out there. And that's why I encourage people to follow people like you, like Matthew, like Kathy, like, me, Tony, Vitilo, and Kent Bai. I think that there are a lot of people out there who are really striving for truth and understanding the future direction of this, of the media, and really helping people through a lot of the chatter and the noise.
One thing people have been, and we only have a few minutes left for our chat this morning, but a lot of people have been asking me, both in my consulting business and just socially, what should I do? What should my business do, right? People are feeling the FOMO. It's like we were talking a little bit about the early days of the internet. I don't know if you remember this. In the 90s, people were like, if I don't have an email address, I'm going to pay a business price and perhaps a social price. Right. I'll be left behind. Are people going to be left behind in the metaverse if they don't get into VR or read Matthew's book or start understanding how Web3 works? Are these going to be critical business skills, or is it too early? Where are we in this? People ask me all the time, and I
What do you
know
tell
there's
them?
not just one answer.
What do you
but
say?
What do I say? Well, look, I mean, it's 2022. I'm looking at this decade as the decade where we sort of go from no one living in an immersive 3D world to everyone living in one some of the time. So that's what I think is going to happen over the course of 10 years. That said, this is 2022. It's not 2030. I think in 2030, the FOMO would be legit. In 2022, it may be a bit aspirational.
Exactly. But baby steps. And I think that there's something to be said about, getting out there and making mistakes or trying things out. I mean, I look at brands like Nike that are crushing it. They clearly get it, and it works so well for their brand. And I'm a big fan of pretty much everything they've done in this space, and so many things across, like, VR, AR, Roblox, Fortnite. I mean, everywhere. The skins, it's just extraordinary. But not every company is a high value retail company.
Sure.
What I would say is, though, you don't want to be Sears, because Sears, was just like, we have catalogs. Why do we need this World Wide Web? Who is using this internet anyway?
It's true. When you put it that way, Sears should have been Amazon. Yeah.
So this is what happens. This is the risk, that you have this really comfortable business model and you think, I don't really see how this is going to impact us. We have brick and mortar stores. We have catalogs. Who wants more?
Right.
We are the de facto leader in this space. But guess what? Artifact, which was actually Nike's biggest competitor online, because online, the physical value of your brand makes no sense anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. So if everything you've carefully crafted over the past, however long your brand is doesn't have any value anymore in the virtual world. So we have to recraft it for this new medium.
My dog is saying that it's time to go.
I see.
I think he just saw somebody from the balcony walk by on the street, and now he's losing his mind. So there's not a better way to be wrapping up than to be interrupted by a impatient dog. He hasn't eaten breakfast yet either.
Oh,
so.
Poor thing.
Catherine, thanks for speaking with me this morning. It's great to see you, even though we're not fully present together. Next time, we're going to get together in VR chat and go for poking around.
I can't wait. Let's do that soon. Thank you so much,
I would really
Kelly.
enjoy it. Catherine, thank you very much. And I wish you and everybody who's listening a great weekend. See you next Friday, everyone.
Bye.